So good morning and welcome to the Standing Committee meeting for Wednesday, February 1st, 2023. All council meetings will continue to be live streamed on the city's website. Our first order of business is roll call. Will the clerk please take the roll?
Reverend Burgess, Mr. Coghill, Ms. Gross,
Here.
Mr. Kraus,
Here.
Mrs. Cal Smith, Ms. Strasburger,
Here.
Ms. Warwick,
Here.
Mr. Wilson, Mr. Lavelle Chair.
Here.
5 members present.
Thank you. Our next order of business is public comment. I would like to remind all speakers that the rules of council state that comments are limited to matters of concern, official action, or deliberation which are or may be before city council, and profanity will not be permitted. After you are called, please restate your name and neighborhood. For the record, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak. Our first registered speaker is Naomi Mullen.
Here. I honor my husband, who is a true public servant. He started in the 1970s as a lifeguard, then the water department, and then from 1980 on until the very last minute, he was allowed to work at age 65 in 2021. Shady trees, not shady deals in Bon Air. This is for you, Michael. The Bon Air Elementary School building once was a shining example of what a city public school could be. Instead, the public school board has chosen to squander this building. It's become a detriment to our neighborhood because it's deteriorating and attracting youth that break in. They even had to be taken out handcuffed. We, the property owners, taxpayers, voters, and caretakers of our neighborhood are the real stakeholders. We say take it down. We do not consent to a detrimental building remaining to decay the community we have built and maintained. Former Mayor Peduto was defeated and left in disgrace. He appointed a panel that claimed the Bon Air Elementary School building should remain. We, the people of Bon Air, have driven past former school buildings and heard the stories of feces in the hallway and criminal acts around those buildings. We, the people, say no to any use of the school except as a green space. Here's the situation. An excellent school was closed. The building has become a threat and a detrimental harm. It should be condemned and sold to the city for $1. It must be torn down. Parks and trees, Pittsburgh fund taxes need to be used to make it a green space. The residents of Bon Air care for it as volunteers. Why are we paying taxes for continued detriment? Why should we pay taxes for this detriment? According to the Pennsylvania Constitution, the purpose of government is for the peace, safety, and happiness of the people they serve. The Bon Air Memorial Green Space is the solution for the peace, safety, and happiness of the Bon Air community. Without that, there is no valid governance. This is from my husband's funeral. Retired Deputy Chief Mike Mullen touched the lives of many people. His uncompromising dedication to his sworn duty to provide for the safety of the citizens of Pittsburgh was truly exceptional and one that should be emulated by every firefighter. He loved sharing his knowledge of firefighting in all its many aspects to make our firefighters safer, smarter, and more efficient on the fire ground. Mike knew most of the firefighters on the entire Pittsburgh Bureau of Fire by their first name and would always be approachable regardless.
Thank you. Our next registered speaker is Aikahana Halmalkina.
Greetings. My title is Ikahana Halamakina. I am the Grand Inca of the Iroquois Confederacy of Aboriginal American people. I will reread what I stated yesterday, making recommendations from your constituents. Recommendations of the people you were elected to serve. As I listen to the public outcry of the people that you serve, it is my duty to bring their concerns to you, City Council. And I don't believe, and they don't believe, City Council has done enough to make the people a part of this process. You received a lot of feedback from the rare public information sessions that you held regarding the American Rescue Plan Fund. We are still not sure why you even went out your way to do so, because when given the opportunity to implement the dozens of feedback and comments that were given during those sessions, instead you all made the egregious decision to bail out already well-off corporate entities, insurance companies, and hospitals, who already do not do enough to contribute to society by avoiding paying taxes. With prices of food at an all-time high, people have expressed a need for food and help with their utilities instead of help with their medical bills. How is the city also still considering a curfew for an already marginalized population of people? To add a curfew of 10 p.m., you have now criminalized wanting to be outdoors. With nowhere to play and nothing to do, because recreation centers across the city have been closed for a long time in these marginalized communities. The Bible even cautions against the idle mind, because we know that it is indeed a devil's workshop. The opportunity has knocked. Will you answer? I would also like to remember Tyree Nichols, Michaela Bryant from Ohio, Jalen Walker, also from Ohio, Keenan Anderson from California, and a host of other people who have died at the hands of police brutality. Before the cameras were rolling, there was also David Streeter, Bernard Rogers, Jerry Jackson, and my beloved brother Jerome Smith, who also died with Michelle Rankin at the behest of an officer who was, in their opinion, chasing an assailant for a non-violent crime throughout the streets of Pittsburgh, erratically driving caused the death of Jerome and Michelle Rankin. I would also employ that those wild police.
Thank you very much. That exhausts our list of registered speakers. If there's anyone in chambers wishing to speak, please come forward at this time. Please provide your name and neighborhood for the record. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak.
Good morning. My name is Yvonne F. Brown. I live at 715 Mercer Street. That's Pittsburgh 15219 at the top of Bedford. I come today to try to say goodbye to a couple of people that meant a lot to me. First, I want to say that we had an elder. Her name was Mary Christine Cole. She was 96 years old. She lived in Katie Irvis Tires. She passed. She had 6 grown children, all elders. But at her funeral, they did something I had never seen before. They took the family, that was the children, the grandchildren, and great-grands, where they brought a crown and they put it on her head. And they were saying, there's a song, I'm going to see the King. I don't know whether in your churches or not, but in our church, like a lot of times in the choir, we would sing about going to see the King. That's like we're going to heaven. But it was so beautiful. It brought tears to my eyes. Her children, her grandchildren, would put the crown, saying you were our queen. Also, I just saw on the paper about Celeste Taylor. I tried to write a little poem for her. It says, Celeste, my friend, we come to the end. God, I believe, said, it's time to rest. You did your best for peace, safety, and happiness, and freedom of speech. You did your work, like there's a song, let the work I've done speak for me. She did a lot, and she was truly a friend. There's times that I talked to her, and she actually tried to get me ways to come to some of the some of the marching. We marched beside each other. With me not having the transportation, I don't get to go a lot of the places that I would like to go. But I wanted you and everyone to know that this woman, Celeste Scott, we should give her praise. Celeste Scott, Dorothy Egerhart, Florence Bridges, Brandy Fisher. I'm just naming some off the top of my head, that these women came down and spoke. There's a lot of you that don't come. So when you don't come, you don't know what's happening down here. Sometimes I wish that if I had a way to stay home, I would, and not actually come down and look at gents. Because you know what? You hurt my heart that you're supposed to be listening to us. You talk amongst each other. You get up from the table. You even had Mr. Kraus go and talk to my councilman, and they start a conversation. And I had to holler. I'm hollering, no, I got 3 minutes. Do you understand? 3 minutes is not that much. There's also the way that they do it. You have with it, thank you. You just have a nice day.
Anyone else wishing to speak?
Hi, my name is Tori Tambolini. I work in Market Square, but I live in Bloomfield. And I'm here to talk about the resolution authorizing the crisis support program for food service and retail workers. So I currently am an organizer with Workers United, which is an affiliate of SEIU, but my organizing started at the Market Square Starbucks. There's about 300 unionized stores, and most stores, if you ask them why they unionized, they'll cite similar concerns like hour cuts, wages, things like that. But Market Square has some unique concerns that are unique to the location of the Starbucks store. Being in Market Square, most of the people that walk through our door every day are people who are homeless, and they are often struggling with issues such as mental illness or drug addictions. And this leads us to a lot of situations that we are not equipped to deal with. There were times when I had to stop making drinks to assist a customer who was having a mental health crisis in our restrooms, and there were 2 occasions where I had to administer Narcan to customers in the store or just outside the store. Although the company is well aware of these issues, and they even classify Market Square as a high-incident store, they refuse to provide us any additional training or any additional resources to help with these problems. Even whenever we were going through the process of organizing and having our election soon, they dangled the idea of having a social worker in our store in front of our faces to get us to try to stop unionizing. But whenever I talked to the organization that would have allegedly provided these services, they said that that was really never something that Starbucks talked to them about. So I am just here to express support for this crisis support program and let you know that it would really, really benefit people like the baristas and shift supervisors at the Market Square location. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Bernadette. I haven't been here for a while. I've missed you guys. You've been busy. I like the curfew. It might stop places like Coons from forcing teenagers to work beyond the curfew time. Yesterday, approaching one of 2 of the dangerous zebra lines at the top of the truck route Coast Realty Broadway, a school bus. I was in the middle of Broadway in the zebra crossing lines. She looked right at me and she sped through. I guarantee you it was not the speed limit. She did not stop. She went so fast I couldn't even get a glimpse of the number. We need those pedestrian cross buttons, please. My daughter moved, thank goodness, from Westview back to the Berg. She's now in Crafton. I took the Nobleston bus. She lives a little far up on Crafton Boulevard from Stratmore. There are zero sidewalks that's the only point I could see when I get off at Nobleston up to Stratmore. None. And I'm going through blah. Bus driver, you can see it was a brand new curb So I don't know how they did this curb and did not follow the laws and put in the yellow wheelchair ramp. He let me off he turned the corner to Noblestown from Crafton Boulevard. And I said, there is no handicap accessible anything. He says, yes, there is. And I looked at him and I said, no, there isn't. He was one of the bus drivers that hates to put seats up for people in chairs. There was another lady in a chair. And I looked at him and I stopped when the ramp went down. I said, sir, that is a sewer, as in the clown lives there. I was forced to go up into the wooded area, not seeing because of all the weeds. The sewer, by the way, is completely covered with leaves. This is like right at the beginning where the old trolleys used to go. This was my neighborhood, so I know that very well. There's no excuse. So I don't know if this is good, if they're going to go like this. I don't know if it's city, if it's going to be PennDOT, if it's going to be Port Authority, but I'm going to start with you guys. I think this is Teresa's area. You got to reach out. You have to coordinate. There is no excuse that a bus driver forces somebody off at a bus stop and there's no handicap anything. I was in shock. That's it. Love you all. Miss you all.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any?
Hello, my name is Andrea Boone. I live on 1211 Louise Street in Munhall, PA, and I'm just here to say please pass the crisis bill on behalf of everyone here and Starbucks workers who would greatly benefit, and thank you guys.
Thank you. Any further speakers? Any further speakers? Seeing none, that will move us on to our standing committee agenda. Our first committee of the day is Finance and Law, which is chaired by myself. Our first supplemental bill is 1196.
Bill 1196, Resolution amending Resolution Number 390, effective July 21st, 2022, entitled Resolution Adopting a Reapportionment Plan for the City Council Districts in the City of Pittsburgh, is set forth in a map approved by the July 13th, 2022 Standing Committee and finally passed by City Council on July 21st, 2022 by correcting a technical error in the legislative text of Resolution Number 390 of 2022.
Motion to approve, please.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to our deferred paper, Bill 1128.
Bill 1128, Resolution designating banks and lending institutions to act as depositories for the year 2023 in accordance with the Pittsburgh Code Title II Fiscal Article 3 Depositories.
Motion to approve, please.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That takes us to our new papers. Madam President, will you read bills 1149, 1150, 1151, 1152, 1153 altogether? They all require executive session.
Bill 1149, Resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Max Petrunia, P.C. in the amount of $30,000 in settlement of litigation filed in the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Bill 1150, Resolution authorizing the issuance of a warrant in favor of Tucker Orensburg, P.C. in an amount not to exceed $8,933 for professional services for an early neutral evaluation related to litigation in the United States District Court for the Western District of Pennsylvania. Bill 1151, Resolution amending 260 of 2021, which authorized the mayor and the city solicitor to enter into a professional services agreement with Campbell Durant, P.C. for professional legal services and expert advice regarding labor matters by increasing the total spend by $100,000 for a new not to exceed amount of $490,000. And Bill number 1152, Resolution amending 527 of 2022, which authorized the mayor and the city solicitor on behalf of the city of Pittsburgh to enter into a professional services agreement with Cohen Law Group to address a matter of pending telecommunications litigation by increasing the total spend by $50,000 for a new not-to-exceed amount of $196,050. M. Bill 1153, resolution amending 458 of 2022, which authorized the mayor and the city solicitor to enter into a professional services agreement with Fisher Phillips for legal services in connection with collective bargaining by increasing the total spend by $250,000 for a new not-to-exceed amount of $300,000.
We have a motion to hold all bills for executive session? Need a second.
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All bills will be held for executive session. We need a motion to approve the invoices.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Invoices are approved. Need a motion to approve the P cards.
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? P cards are approved. That takes us to Public Safety and Wellness Committee, chaired by Councilman Kraus. We have one new paper, Bill 1160.
Bill 1160, resolution authorizing the Department of Public Safety and the Office of Community Health and Safety to develop a crisis support program for frontline retail and food service workers in the city of Pittsburgh.
Motion to, I'm sorry, thanks, Councilwoman.
I see that you're still there, Mr. Krause. I apologize.
Yeah. No, I appreciate your willingness.
Thank you. We need a second.
Yeah. I'll second it, Councilwoman.
Thank you, Mr. Krause. I appreciate the councilman deferring to me. We've been working on this paper just a few weeks, and I want to acknowledge that my staff have been working with kind of frontline service workers across the city. But the idea really did come from the organizing Starbucks workers. This is one of their main asks, as you might have heard, I think, in public comment, for their corporate employers. But once we heard about it, we started talking amongst ourselves, and most of us have, including myself, decades ago, but recently my staff, have worked in the service economy and have friends and networks in the service economy. I represent a lot of the small businesses in the city. I know some other council members have a great deal of small businesses that are publicly facing. And we know that our small businesses, especially kind of coffee shops and daytime shops, are becoming, or even nighttime economy stores, are becoming an informal social safety net, but without the resources. And so this is a very simple bill. We've talked to the administration. We know that we know how to do these trainings, and we've done them for our own workers, our own staff. Even council members have gone through some of this training. We know that we have supplies. And so we're working with Public Safety and the Office of Community and Health Services to see how we can roll out more extensive publicly facing training so that workers in the city are better equipped to handle the needs of our residents. I know we've got someone here for Public Safety. We have Laura Dragowski, if any members have any questions.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, I was just curious how this, would this be a program that would work alongside some of like what the Roots program is doing, or?
Yeah, we're still kind of exploring with the administration, but I'd love to bring Laura to the table if you.
That'd be great.
would like that. So, Laura, would you mind joining us and identifying yourself? I don't see Director Schmidt in the room, so appreciate it.
Thanks. Members, Councilperson Gross, would it be all right if I gave some thoughts on what we've discussed?
Just give us your name and title for the record.
Sure. I'm Laura Dragowski. I'm the manager of the city's Office of Community Health and Safety, which very newly is a part of the Department of Public Safety. So we really appreciate Councilperson Gross and our community leaders and organizers bringing this this issue to the attention of the greater community. Would agree completely that our people who are working in environments that have low barrier access, libraries, coffee shops, restaurants, are oftentimes very undersupported as it pertains to helping our neighbors in need. And I think This is not dissimilar to what we've all been trying to share, which is we have a lot of community members who have unmet needs, and we don't have the adequate complement of resources to address those needs, which means that whether it's paramedics, firefighters, police, or community members themselves, or even our staff who work at the desks in the council offices, the council constituent affairs staff, the mayor's office staff. There's oftentimes a lot of people who have very complex needs that cannot be easily addressed with a phone call or, a helping hand. As Councilperson Gross mentioned, we have worked on these programs in the past. We were able to work with the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership, the Health Department, and the Roots program to do a kind of introductory program to community members downtown, talking about basic de-escalation, safety, who to call, when to call, what people may be going through when they're experiencing homelessness or having a mental health crisis, why they may present in various ways, and what can be done to kind of keep everyone safe. The law enforcement was involved in that as well. We don't see this as exclusive. We want to make sure we're trauma informed in our approach to doing this, so we really do try to tailor these trainings to meet the needs of the various stakeholders. It is labor intensive to set up these trainings. They're very necessary, but we really want to coordinate the subject matter experts from different entities. So I think that Councilperson Gross, and with the support of council, this makes a lot of sense to bring in a coordinator. I think Director Schmidt and the Department of Public Safety were also leaning in this direction for something that would be kind of a community education coordinator. So what we see is that this person could be working toward empowerment of various community members. I think priority being to our frontline, I know sometimes that evokes like this military feeling, but are people who have the privilege, but oftentimes also the challenge of interacting with people who have unmet needs. So I think that's a priority, and we can look to the nighttime economy staff who've been working toward this, emergency management who have as well. So I think it would be a nice point of coordination for all the different efforts ongoing. Councilperson Wilson, in answer to your question, I think absolutely, number one, it should be a partnership with our Roots team. They're really leading the way as it pertains to helping some of the members of our community who have these needs. But I will reiterate that we can train our community members as thoroughly as possible. If we do not have a back end set of resources to help people, I think we are actually, still going to see a lot of unmet needs and challenges presenting and potentially hurting people in our community. And that means we really need to see deeper investments in the mental health system. It's really discouraging how oftentimes we see people who are having a crisis and how few resources exist for those individuals. And this is why we see carcelization of people who have mental health crises, because we have physicians at Western Psych saying maybe you should just arrest this person. So like real talk, I think we can train our community members to be very prepared to do everything they can. But if there are no resources that will better serve that individual, those individuals will continue to present. And I think we'll be in a bit of a Sisyphean place of continued training without help. So thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about it, and happy to answer additional questions.
Yeah, thanks for the overview. A couple questions come to mind. So would this be, would the worker reach out, or would the business reach out, or would the city require workers in the city that work in these environments to be certified, if that's what you're looking for, and if that's what you're envisioning?
There's nothing about certification.
Yeah, so how would this work? Like, would the worker reach out, or would the business have to be on board with the worker reaching out?
I think it's a good question. I don't know that mandating this kind of training would be productive. I mean, I think we would love to see everybody as prepared as possible, but I would imagine each of you have businesses and community organizations that are reaching out pretty regularly saying they need some help. So I think starting with the organizations that self-identify, as it pertains to individual staff versus the business owner, I think we would have to think that through, because obviously we're willing to help in whatever capacity, but we want to make sure that we're not walking into a business that we are not welcome. But to obviate that, I think there's the opportunity to do trainings outside of people's working hours. So if an individual wants to seek that resource and they don't necessarily have the support from the business owner, we can still provide them with training as community members. And I think that goes back to this idea of resident empowerment, neighborhood health and safety academy. How do we just help residents to better understand the existing systems? But I think I would defer to your leadership as to whether these would be something that would ultimately be mandated. I think that would probably be pretty difficult.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because from what I've heard, this space is already filled with a lot of, from what I hear, from professionals that work in this area of people that are working with people that are outside and dealing with a mental health issue, that the lack of training is, there's people out there with a lot of lack of training to deal with individuals out there, and then that causes further problems. And they're trying to connect them to parts of the system or create their own system that isn't really helpful to that individual. So how do you, this is unique because how do you kind of toe the line of giving them some information, but yet not equipping them fully enough to, will they call the roots, the specialized individuals that will go out and help individuals that they're seeing, instead of them taking that on and feeling like they would be the ones that would be, that could save that individual?
I think that's a critically important question, and I think very often we see, especially in the areas of people who are unsheltered or who have needs that present in the public, that we think that any help is better than none. We have a lot of residents in our community who are very compassionate and really want to help, but the population that we're talking about, if they had better support and resources, may not be having these challenges in public. And we would then have medical professionals, licensed professionals, healthcare, whatever they may be, people with known training credentials doing work to help people. I think what you're describing happens very often, where it's people care a lot, but they can actually create a lot more harmful situations by kind of dipping in and trying to help. Promises of housing and promises of other resources that are not available. And I think it's unconscionable to all of us that they're not available, but if you don't know, you don't know. And then when you make those commitments to people and fail to follow through on those commitments, you actually further undermine the trust that people have in anyone who's trying to help them. So I think a major part of this would have to be boundary setting. We're training you to work in the context of what can you do in that moment to promote safety and well-being. We're not training you to become an intensive case manager, a service navigator, a social worker. We want to encourage that people, we're trying to professionalize this space, right? We have a lot of requirements that we have for firefighters, paramedics, and EMTs, but we have just this kind of malarkey of people out there helping. And if this is a population we care so much about it, why aren't we better supporting those organizations, ensuring that they are operating ethically and under best practices? And so I think that would have to be a very critical part of the training to prevent that. I think the second point about would they just call roots? So, even with 311s, we see the weaponization of 311s. You get a community meeting where everybody is really upset that, that Bobby is hanging out in the park every day. And you'll get 30 311s about Bobby. And Bobby's, got like 2 boxes and a chair, and you would think Bobby has literally lit the park on fire the way you're getting 311s. And I think we've told residents to tell us about 311s, so I don't blame our residents for doing that. But I also volume is not necessarily correlated with how critical something is. It's just the mechanism people have to report. If someone comes into a coffee shop and they're kind of having a rough day, but they ultimately leave and return to a place that we hope is safe, that doesn't necessitate a multiple alarm response, and we pull a whole team out of doing the work that they are intending to do to go say hello to someone who ultimately just came in for 5 minutes and wanted to go back out. So I also think that's a critical part of Roots deployment, social workers, all of this, is that we come up with ways that they are dispatched and they are engaged that are not just going to be predicated on who finds something to be a nuisance. It does really need to rise to the level of a person who has could be really hurt, that there's a real safety issue there for that person, not that they pose a nuisance. So I think you're right. That would be a major part of this.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested to see how this is, the creation of this. And it reminds me of, and this was actually struck down. This bill doesn't do this, but remember the bill that went to the Supreme Court, and it was the one where the fire code. So like all security guards would be trained, if the building was a certain amount of square footage, and that would be like by code, like they'd have to, the security guards would be trained because fire, they do rely heavily on that support, and that people on site to be educated. So yeah, I think this is really important, and at the end of the day, I hope this sheds some light on just, how much those workers should be better supported and paid better.
Thank you. Councilman Coghill?
Thank you. Good morning, Laura. Talk to me about, you said you have done this training before. Talk to me about that. What kind of training are we looking at, and have you done it in group sessions, or do you do it one-on-one?
So there are, I don't want to say hodgepodge, but there have been specialized trainings that we've had, so focused specifically on overdose, right, or and overdose prevention, or focused specifically on what might be occurring for an individual who's unsheltered and what that would mean to a business owner or a resident. We've had several. One in particular was initiated by Jeremy Waldrop and the Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership. I'm going to estimate 2.5 years ago. And it was Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership Clean and Safe Committee members. So those are business owners downtown and residents who have taken an active interest in making sure that our downtown area is a place for everyone. I think that the participants in that training were very motivated to understand how they could help, how it wouldn't be just calling the police on people all the time, but what was the role that they could play to keep themselves, others, people are unsheltered, people are in crises, visitors, everyone safe. So in that particular training, the community resource officers from downtown, Eldridge Kilborough and Brian Wisner, the Roots Program Director, Dan Palka, the overdose prevention outreach coordinator from the health department, Stacy Brown, and myself, we had a group session. It was, I would say there were maybe 20 participants. We had, I can't remember the order, sort of like homelessness. Why are people experiencing homelessness? What is the role that the city can play? How do you recognize and respond to an overdose? And how might you help to de-escalate a situation? Recognizing that safety first. If you don't feel safe, then we do not encourage people to proactively engage. It's an interactive training, Q&A. People can interject. We do a little bit of like scenario-based review, and we had PowerPoints, which, PowerPoints.
Have you gotten calls from private businesses who want this training?
We've definitely had calls from employees. I couldn't say who the representatives are from those businesses. I don't know if it's the CEO, the president, the operations manager, but we've had, I would say, a number of calls from people who represent themselves as being part of our businesses. I don't want to call them out publicly, but there are several businesses downtown who have had people die by overdose in their bathrooms, and they want help, not just teaching their employees to respond, because, by the way, they had 16-year-old employees who were finding a person who had died in the bathroom. I mean, this is trauma begetting trauma. But they wanted even help understanding infrastructure, right? So we have a door that locks and we don't know what's going on in that bathroom. What would a policy be that we check the door after a certain period of time? So even stuff that I think emergency management has taken into consideration. How do you just make the physical facility safer? So we've had businesses downtown. I know just as we're all city residents in our real lives, I've had people share, I think that some folks from a business in Bloomfield, that they're having this problem pretty regularly. Yeah, so it's, I think that people are looking to all partners, and they're not necessarily just coming to the city. I think they go to the other county entities, and they go to nonprofits as well.
Right. So knowing you and what you do, your resources are spread thin. What's this mean to your department?
So I think that I spoke with Director Schmidt about this. So we have an open position in the Stop the Violence Trust Fund positions that are allocated to our
We would
office.
create a position.
Yeah, and in speaking with Director Schmidt, the thinking is that this would be a community education coordinator. So it would, the person would we would like to hire someone who is from our
It's not a
community.
trained professional.
Does not have to be, because I think what we want them to do is coordinate the resources, not necessarily engage conduct the trainings, right? I think that we would rather find someone who is understands our neighborhoods, understands the businesses and the residents, knows how to interact with them, and then can tap the trainers to be part of a coordinated.
So the trainers are whom?
So we've mentioned that we have partners from Roots, we have partners from law enforcement if that would be appropriate, we have partners from the health department. As people would kind of tailor their trainings, there are organizations that provide mental health first aid training. That's a more intensive training. There are, both big and small nonprofits that have that. We can look to county DHS. It's more about creating almost, I think, a menu of resources that people may find to be appropriate for their circumstances, and then ensuring that we have the right trainers to be part of that.
So the position you would hire is more of a coordinator, not a trainer.
I think that's correct.
And you would tap into other areas for training.
Yeah.
And the coordinator would coordinate that.
That's right.
And
And I
what-
think needs assessments too. Where don't we have any resources?
And
on
what kind
there?
of salary are we talking about for the coordinator?
I believe that the salary right now, so the position that exists was vacated. I think that salary presently is 65.
65,000. Okay. Full-time job,
It's a full-time job.
right? And I know people individually have reached out to you from all walks of life. It doesn't have to be a business. It could be somebody who just wants to learn.
Yep.
And we're willing to train them and to do that.
Yep.
And we'll hold classes, I guess, of some sort.
We've had conversations separately with both some of medical direction from EMS who are interested in extending CPR, Stop the Bleed, other community empowerment trainings, and also with our training division at EMS, James Latowski, Assistant Chief Pinchuk, and I think that there's a real desire to extend those kind of medical life-saving efforts as well. We've got great trainers, and we have great community trainers as well. It's just, as you said, setting up even regular kind of public-facing community trainings for people to participate in. So you don't have to be affiliated with Starbucks, or you don't have to be affiliated with a particular nonprofit. You happen to be someone on the block who is invested in keeping your fellow residents safe, and we can make that available to them
So
too.
the position for 65 that is open, was that ever designated for anything else, or?
Yes, so that was originally designated as the community engagement coordinator for our office, and as
What would that person do?
the previous community engagement coordinator. So that person, along with several others, was moved to neighborhood services. So that was to, I think, sort of centralize the community engagement efforts on the city's behalf. We envisioned that position from the beginning to be less about regular attendance at community meetings and sort of like the presentation of information, and more about building trust with our residents and doing something very similar to what we're talking about here, which is needs assessments. What does a community feel would be helpful for them to feel empowered, and then collaborating to bring in those resources to help. So I think it actually dovetails very well with what our original expectation was. But of course, I think we have community members, residents who are very engaged through community meetings. So oftentimes people with that title, community engagement coordinator, do end up going to a lot of community meetings. That's not what we see that position doing. It wasn't originally what we see the position doing. I think we'd be very willing to work with council to tailor that position to meet the expectations of this legislation, as well as what I think public safety and Stop the Violence are endeavoring to do.
Okay, so we hire somebody at 65,000 to coordinate things, and the people we're tapping into are professionals, and they will train whoever's in need or wanting training. And you don't feel it, I guess what you're telling me is the original position and this position are not that far apart.
That's right. That's right. And I can't say for certain if the salary range would reflect what it was originally classed as, because we'd have to get I think a new position approved. But that's the amount of money that's presently allocated for that position.
So this is open to everybody, not just restaurants.
Yeah, I think the goal would be that we're not, we're going to try to go where people are expressing need to us. And I think a priority population are places that are allowing common spaces, places that allow people to come in, but then oftentimes may not be able to support them. So I think restaurants and coffee shops and libraries tend to be kind of high on that list.
Okay, that's it. Thanks.
President?
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm going to abstain today because I actually received a few phone calls about saying that there was a position like this last year or year before, I think they said, that we had in place. But just even a quick search of just some of the things you're saying, and I see things that are available free to the public and free to training and all that. So I just want to say I'm going to abstain today. But I feel like everybody wants to help in this area, but I also feel like there's opportunities available for people to have free services and free training. So I just want to make sure, and I want to talk to the people it's mostly people from the East End calling my office, saying that they want me to check into this. So I'm going to check into that and hear what they have to say first. They're not from my district, but I'm still going to hear what they have to say, and then I'll call you with any questions I have about it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Strasburger?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councilwoman Gross, for introducing this legislation, and thank you, Laura, for being here and for explaining the intricacies of what this could look like. You answered a lot of my questions already. I'll just say I'm generally supportive. I recognize the increasing importance, as we saw during the lockdown portion of the pandemic, how important third places are. We've known that for a long time to third places like coffee shops, like restaurants, like libraries, like et cetera, that help us form relationships outside of our home and our work settings. And so important to just overall health and mental health. So I do want to support these workers who are facing, much like our police, we've talked a lot about our police facing situations and scenarios that they may not feel they have the training for, may not initially be the expected part of the position. Want to support those who find themselves in these new scenarios. And as long as we are not pulling away from the other parts of OCHS that are so very important and were the originally established portion of the job, which it sounds like, as you've discussed, there's a plan for that. This is an and, not an or. Then I am supportive. I'll also just, as we were talking about the possible partners, I wanted to mention the Office of Nighttime Economy, who has such a wealth of knowledge about who those bars and restaurants are that might need additional support. I call out Richard Ratner, who used to be in Shadyside, now is in Lawrenceville, who was the former Shadyside Chamber of Commerce president and happens to be the owner of a bar. Before my time, had pulled together other bar owners and restaurant owners in Shadyside to offer trainings to the staff there when maybe not the exact same types of scenarios were occurring, but similar types of challenging scenarios, a challenging customer that needs to be escorted out of the establishment, let's say, or refusing to serve or that sort of thing. So I know this has happened in pockets in the past, and also want to draw on some of the experiences that say, Office of Nighttime Economy could bring to or through, state resources that she has access to bring to bear. As well as DHS, just want to call out that when I was chief of staff in this for city council, Brandon Forbes at the time offered a training for city council staffers on all the resources that are available for city council that we might not be aware of. So want to make sure that you mentioned them, but I wanted to make sure that that sort of thing for certain audiences is part of brought into the fold as well. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman Warwick?
I don't really have too many questions. You mentioned it earlier, Laura, so that just for folks to remember, we do offer these trainings, right? Stop the bleed, recognize a stroke, CPR, de-escalation trainings for if you work in the, bars or restaurants or whatever. So this is something that we already do. So this just seems like kind of an extension of that, which seems fairly straightforward. well, I'm sure you know this, but those trainings are actually very well organized through the community groups and well established, right? So I don't know if there's folks to, not necessarily for the content, but for the structure, that could certainly be of help about how to turn people out, because that's, as far as, as far as making it mandatory, I'd turn to to the workers, keep organizing and get that in your contract. And then, ideally, if it was mandatory and then the businesses were coming to us, we could, charge a fee and let it pay for itself, and there you go, right? So we're all sort of supporting each other. Also, just a reminder to our colleagues at the county to, if anybody's listening, to, please pitch in here, work with us, not siloed beside us. These things get done as, the resources are there, the people are there. We just need to work together. And finally, just a quick reminder to the public. I mean, in the past, since COVID, the treatment of service workers is just, it's just atrocious. I worked in the service industry when I was young, and I never experienced anything like what I've seen in the past couple of years. I'm sure our workers can attest to that. So, and then keeping in mind on top that they are also dealing with, with folks with mental illness, substance addiction, et cetera, et cetera. So be kind. Be kind to your service workers. Give them a break. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Second round, Councilwoman Gross.
Thank you. Appreciate it. These are all really great questions. I appreciate it from my colleagues and suggestions. And I think the nighttime economy one is, especially if I hadn't mentioned it, that's a great, it's really a point that bears repeating. Several of the workers and establishments that we also talked with are nighttime economy and not just daytime economy ones. So they've reached out, they've enlisted some nonprofits to do some of the training. I want to point out that a lot of the establishments are small establishments, and I think that this is something that we know how to do. We have the supplies, we have the expertise, but it's almost like we need to just make sure that we're focusing on maybe populations that we hadn't reached before. So when I think about the community meetings in my own district where we might have had these things, it isn't the same meeting that these workers might have been at. They're almost just kind of like different networks of people. So I think it's important that where we have the resources and the capability, that even though we wished, for example, we're always happy to repeat it at this table, well, we wish the county were doing these things. If they're not, we have created our own Office of Community Health and Safety with our own taxpayer money and our own city money. And we're filling in gaps because there are gaps, and it's our residents who are falling through those gaps. And that's unfortunate. I'm happy to repeat it. And we look to the county as a partner. But a lot of these things that were also mentioned here today that have happened in previous years or before COVID were before we had an Office of Community Health and Safety in our public safety department, and now we do have that. And so I think this is a really great application. I'm really grateful that we are there, and that we have both the fund, this council has put this funding in place and put this capacity in the organizational chart for the city. So, and we certainly have people who are calling out for help. So I appreciate the collaboration of the administration and the willingness to see what we can do to fill in these gaps. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Chair.
you, Madam President.
Thank you. And this may be unfair to ask you, Laura, but I'm just wondering, we were told for the AHN contract, if it wasn't in place by the end of the year, end of December, that there'd be further steps or different action taken. Do you know the status of that?
Yeah, I don't. I'm not involved in that contract negotiation.
Okay, so maybe I'll call the director to the table. Can we come to the table? Public safety. I'm curious where we are with that, because I'm wondering if they're going to be any part of this training or any part of what we're doing. Could you call them to the table, please, Madam Clerk? Thank you. I'll hold the bill until he gets here. Is that okay?
Director of Public Safety.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, may I have a brief comment?
Yes, Councilman Kraus.
Thank you very much. For the newer members of council, just I guess a little predated history. I introduced the topic of the importance of third place and the protection of businesses that cater to our need to socialize, and the importance of those businesses and how we need to garner resources to support those businesses. And I introduced that discussion back in 2009, and it's now 2023. And it's good to see that we collectively, as a city, view or understand and accept our responsibility to nurture, protect, and support third place businesses that provide for our need to socialize, because we are social beings, and that we, things take time. I get that they take time. I would have loved to have seen a broader understanding of the importance of this over the years that I served on council, but it is welcome and refreshing to see that even though it's 15 years later, we are collectively understanding the importance of these businesses, what they provide, and how we accept our responsibility to support third place, and the importance of providing for our socialization. So just wanted to put that out there, and I appreciate the efforts today, and I am in support and happy to vote in favor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Councilman Coghill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I want to go on record saying I would never want this to be mandatory to any business. And I don't think that's I know Councilwoman Warwick mentioned it, but just so we're clear, this is not something we're looking to make mandatory throughout the city of Pittsburgh.
No, I actually, my take on making things mandatory is that you tend to force people who are not interested in engaging at all to engage, and oftentimes that can be, result in a bad outcome. So I don't think we want to force people to do this. I think if people feel it's a need and they're willing to do it, that's great. Otherwise, I think we should just make sure our residents, as we all do all the time, are aware of what does currently exist and know that they can call 911, call 311, call 988, call 211, and understand the differentiation and the resources that are available. So I would agree completely.
Okay, and $65,000 for the job, the coordinator. What other costs would be incurred by the city of Pittsburgh?
I think Councilperson Gross mentioned supplies. When we think about things like overdose prevention, we're very fortunate that the health department has the Narcan available. So that's not something we would incur. If we're talking about compression-only CPR, there's not any certification cost. If we're also including Stop the Bleed, we can create Stop the Bleed kits. One of our colleagues in emergency management is speccing out what that would cost. I think there are a lot of departments that would like to have those available, so we're trying to get a minimum cost for that. Otherwise, I think that there are trainers we would potentially like to pay, particularly, Council President Cale Smith was saying there are organizations and entities that do this. If they do it for free, wonderful. If they don't, and this is how people make their living, I think we would want to have a deeper discussion about how we're making sure we pay them too. At this moment, I couldn't speculate what the cost would be for that, but I think that that's a worthwhile consideration. But material costs are going to be, I think, low, because we really are looking at things like first aid supplies, which even if it's for a business, one could be provided to be behind the counter, and a Stop the Bleed kit might be $10. So we're not looking at very significant expenses. Outside of that, our office has a printing budget and a supply budget, so I don't think that we would be requesting additional funds. I think we would try to work within that. And finally, we did last year received a Bureau of Justice Assistance grant, the Connect and Protect grant. It's a law enforcement mental health response grant, and that's what we've been working our co-response program through. There is a small supply budget there that I think we'd be very willing to tap if it were appropriate to empower the community, and it dovetails with this project.
Okay, I was under the assumption that the counseling would be free, whether it's their organization paying for it or, so you're saying to get a trainer for whether it's a group of 5 or 50, we don't know if we're going to have to pay them or not.
So there, as the council president said, there are a lot of free resources. I think that if we want to focus on free resources, that is perfectly doable. I think there are plenty of free resources. But we also have Stop the Violence Trust Fund recipients that may be motivated to be part of this training, and so we would not necessarily have to pay them because they're already recipients of funding. I think this is going to...
Certified anything?
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
So I think that we would need to do needs assessments with the individual organizations to see where they think that there would be the most value, and that could include our first responders. If we know that Dr. Johnson tells us they're getting a lot of calls for a particular call type, we can incorporate resources that would meet that that need as well. I think when we think about trainers, we are going to try to balance experience and credibility in the field, as well as people who have trust in their neighborhoods. So, we would like to, if we're going to train in the West End, we would like to think about who is already going to be credible and trustworthy in the West End to provide that training.
So you don't have anybody on your staff to do that training?
Some of the training, yes. Okay. So we have like Dr. Sheila Roth. She and our team can talk about trauma response, can talk about critical incident stress debriefing. Certainly, I'm always happy to do overdose prevention training, although we have a great partner at the health department that's free and very knowledgeable. So there are elements that we can also do.
So if I own McDonald's downtown and I want to make that available to my workforce, we're going to have a coordinator to help walk us through those steps. But is there resources out there now if that manager or owner of that retail or restaurant seeks to get training without us? I mean, are the resources out there is what I'm asking you.
So I think the answer is yes and no. So there are disparate resources. There's not sort of a comprehensive set of resources. So, I've mentioned several times overdose prevention training. Our partners at the health department will do that. They are always willing, and they work with nonprofits, for-profits. They're very community groups, so that exists. De-escalation training. There are, I would say, fewer organizations that are offering that as a free service. Oftentimes, when we're looking at training around mental health, we unfortunately have a very taxed mental health system, and the ability for an organization to just have a full-time trainer able to do this is limited, let alone a coordinator to help. So I think there are disparate and different resources, but at the scale we're going to need to say, okay, we're going to be doing these 8 trainings in the south side of Mount Washington, and then we're going to be doing 5 in the East End. And that means we can't just take that one organization and say, hey, we just gave you 13 trainings, because they already have a full complement. So they may be able to do 4 of the trainings in the South Side. Another organization may be able to do, 4 in Mount Washington. But I think that's where we're going to piece it together with the existing organizations as well as possible, so that we're working with an organization that's familiar with their community.
Okay, so I can live with the $65,000. But if we're paying trainers on top of that, I can't live with that, or I need a price. I need to know what that incurs. So, okay, I'll abstain today, but thanks.
Yeah, I just want to say real quickly, I just was texting back and forth with the director, and I just want to make sure. He offered to come up, but the clerk was talking, but I told him I'll call him later to discuss. But Director Schmidt.
Oh, okay.
But I just want to be clear, I actually ran the Parent Educational Resource Centers for Pittsburgh Public Schools, so I know what training's available out there. I know what's free. I know what we can do and what we can't do. And I do also know that there's a need to help navigate the system. There really is, because 211 is supposed to be that. Someone needs help navigating 211. So I think that there's a lot of misinformation for the people. So I think it's very difficult. So I'm not opposed to, I just want to make sure that the conversation we have, that we are very clear on what we're doing, and that we're aware of what is available and how we're identifying groups that may have capacity or may not have capacity that want to be involved. Because one thing I'm noticing is there's a lot of people that want to be involved, and a lot of people who are self-proclaimed social workers, and they don't necessarily have the ability or skill. I'm certainly not a social worker, and I would never pretend that I even understand that world. So, we are fortunate that we have people like you, like Ricky, who help us navigate that system here locally. But for me, I just want to be comfortable with this, but I mostly want to look into whatever this is that I'm getting these phone calls and text messages about a previous position like this or something.
Would I be able to comment on what you said? Would that be all right? Because
Sure.
I agree completely. I think one of the things that we've endeavored to do with our first responders, and we'd like to do with council as well, is you're all getting, I mean, I get calls from people in the community and I say, you really should call Bobby Wilson's office. So I know that
I tell people to call Bobby Wilson's office
or Anthony
too.
Coghill's office, or Eric. Of course, I just got one of those this morning, which is the reason I mention it. I think we've maybe fallen short at times, but our goal would be to actually work with each of you to understand the unique needs. I mean, we know that there are overarching needs across the city, but there are also unique needs in the districts. And we would, I think, based on my conversations with Councilperson Gross, like that the trainings that occur really are tapping resources that do exist. I agree completely that we do not want to just throw people in there because they sound good on a website. I can't make a good website, but I'm sure if I could, I could make it sound like I'm more competent in things than I am. So I think we do want to vet the trainers, make sure that they're appropriate, that they're ensuring the safety of people. I have definitely heard trainings where people have advocated for our residents to do things that I would say are objectively unsafe, and so we never want to get into a situation where we're doing that. I think we need to give a balanced perspective, but prioritize safety. But we'd like to work with each of the council members and their staff to make sure that we're not neglecting a neighborhood or not failing to work with organizations that you all have worked with in the past. So I completely agree on that point, and on the training point as well. And then, as it pertains to a previous position, I can, I'd be happy to send over the community engagement coordinator's original role. If it's still in the government jobs, I'm happy to send that. Other than that, I'm not sure what your constituents may have been
No,
referring
they're
to.
not my constituents, because I would have called them. They're calling my office. I don't know who they're. And then I'm getting text messages now on my work phone. So I want to be clear that I want to help, and I think we all do want to do that. We just want to make sure what we're doing is the right thing. And I also am curious why this couldn't wait until after we're forming this committee to work on the violence in the city of Pittsburgh and the needs of the city of Pittsburgh. And in some component, I see that there's a lot of people working to coordinate the mental health and services getting out to our constituents. But one of the things we kind of wish we would waited for that, but it may not be part of that. So I think. I introduced it before you created that committee. Yeah. But I'm just saying, I wish we could hold it for that, but I'm okay with not doing it. But the other thing is that, I probably lost my train of thought when you said, but I think that overall, I think I want to be supportive. I just want to have some conversations. In talking about the committee that we're working on, I think there's going to be a lot of people involved in a lot of stuff, and part of it is the mental health, navigating the mental health system, I'm sure. And part of it is, I think, going to be addiction and homelessness and all the things that are contributing to the violence. So I'm okay with today. Well, I'll abstain today, but I do want to have a conversation with the director about some of it. That's it. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Warwick.
Yeah, I do just kind of want to reiterate again that we already do so many trainings like this, right? We do that, right? The as I said before, the stop the bleed, de-escalation, CPR, fire safety, these are all things that our various public safety organizations go out into the community for their area of expertise and do. So
yeah, I've arranged those too.
The fact that OCHS would also like to do this for the communities that it serves, I think is both reasonable and makes sense. Also, but just in reference to something we talked about yesterday, I think that, again, as the public, council, all of us really, we talk about, violence prevention as a public safety issue. We need to start looking at our public safety community in a more holistic way. You know, we have this small army of public safety workers in all these various departments, you know, police, fire, EMS, et cetera, with so much expertise, right, in each, and we really need to start thinking about ways that they can work better together rather than being siloed into just the thing that they do. I mean, what comes to mind, right, is the fact that we have firehouses in every neighborhood all over the city. I mean, these are existing buildings that we have, you know, which could be used, I think, and filled with highly trained professionals in many of these things, right? So I would love to see that, you know, whether it's a voluntary thing for folks who, you know, for officers who are interested in doing that, or whether it's, you know, an expansion of roles or whatever. Again, that's not specific to this particular bill, but just in general, kind of keeping in mind that that we do a lot of this, and that we could. I think that our public safety departments could work better together to alleviate some of the costs. You know what I mean? Like, rather than bringing in outside trainers, I mean, we've got people who know how to do so much of this already. It would be great if we could find a way. I always like to look for the you know, how can we do it, as opposed to the sort of, well, we might not be able. Just say, well, we can. Let's just, you know, figure it out.
Would it be all right if I
Say something
responded?
after that.
Sorry, just briefly. So I think we agree, there's something like 1,700 first responders in the city. And when we talk about the reach into the community, it's larger than anything that the county contracts or other partners have. I mean, our first responder core of people is massive, and they also see a lot of things that we may not see. You know, a paramedic goes into a home and realizes in the course of being in that home that there's no food on the shelf. They're there to address a medical emergency, but they also find out that there are some other underlying issues. So we've, you know, been really fortunate to work with people from each of the bureaus. We work with Lieutenant Chad Horosky, Sergeant Colleen Bristow, and Crew Chief John Mooney from Fire, Police, and EMS, respectively. And we've learned a lot in getting them all in the same room. There are patients that will see all three bureaus in the course of a week, but we don't necessarily have data systems that share that. So even knowing that that person has been, unfortunately, pinballing around among our first responders, we're not addressing maybe issues that we could. And so we have our social work staff has case conferences with all of our first responders, being mindful of not sharing patient information, but also coordinating responses. And I think you're spot on, and we do take what we call a translational approach, where we know that they're seeing a lot more, maybe not dissimilar to our staff who work in the community in these various public-facing roles. They see a lot more than we may see, you know, in the course of our day. And rather than kind of having a one-and-done conversation with them and assuming we know everything, we actually need to engage with them on a very regular basis to continue to iterate on what we're doing, so we don't get a little bit of information, plow down a path, and then realize 6 months in that what we've created is garbage, which unfortunately happens a lot when we have a knee-jerk reaction and assume we understand everything. So I want to acknowledge that point. We really love our liaisons. We're very fortunate to work with them and with their bureaus, and I think you're absolutely right that the coordination among them is important.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
Yeah, I just want to make a brief comment. I do understand that there are some things you know, that we have done in the past that maybe not worked, and sometimes we have to revisit those things. And some of us have been doing this kind of work for a long time and know what's available and what's not available. And some of us know that there's some things that are done free and some things that work and some things that don't. Some of us didn't just move here. Some of us have been here for a long time. So I will just say that although I'm open to it, I'm always going to double check to make sure what we're doing is what's in the best interest of the residents of the city of Pittsburgh and what I think is going to be effective as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any in opposition? Any abstentions? One abstention, Madam
I'm
President?
sorry, one abstention.
2 abstentions. Affirmative recommendation. Thank you. That'll take us to Public Works and Infrastructure Committee, chaired by Councilman Coghill. Our first new paper is Bill 1144.
Bill 1144, resolution granting a vacation of unopened portions of Haberman Ave and Palmetto Way laid out in the McLean and Maples first plan of Beltsuver as recorded in the book in the 18th Ward, 3rd Council District of the City of
This is
Pittsburgh.
district. Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second, very brief discussion, please.
Councilman Cross?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Councilman. There will be a number of bills that will be coming before the council over this coming year as they relate to the reconstruction of the Beltsuver School. And so while I have the opportunity, I want to very briefly thank all the different agencies and entities that helped us to get to this point where we are actually looking at things like street vacation and property assemblage so that we're able to actually begin the physical construction or reconstruction of the Beltsuver School, which is going to be estimated between $13 and $15 million investment in the neighborhood. And so I really would like to thank and recognize the Beltsuver Consensus Group. None of this could have been possible if it were not for the diligence and the cooperation of the Beltsuver Consensus Group. We began with the school board and their willingness to sell the school to the Beltsuver Consensus Group so that we could begin this journey that we're on about its reimagination. I'd like to thank the Birmingham Foundation, who was instrumental in helping us navigate the purchasing process by which we were able to actually purchase the school and begin the journey. The Heinz Endowment, they were critical in providing the necessary funding and resource at the beginning to mothball the building, protect some damage to the roof, which was causing internal damage to the building, helping to secure the building so that no further harm or damage would come to it. We could not have done this without the support and assistance of the Heinz Endowments and the Birmingham Foundation. And then I'd like to sincerely recognize previous Mayor Peduto, who was a more than willing partner on this journey to assist us to getting to the point to where we were actually a recognized entity that we could go and secure the kind of funding that would be necessary to make this kind of investment in the school. And then lastly, Mayor Gainey and his, he helped us. We were the little engine that could. We got it so far, but Mayor Gainey, believing in this project, pushed it over the top and fought for our funding. And we were funded on the first round, which is highly unusual. But the importance of the project and the belief in the project by Mayor Gainey pushed us over the top. And so we are now, this is the first piece of legislation we're seeing, which is directly related to the reconstruction of the school. We'll see a number of these things coming through over the next year, or maybe even a little bit more, even after I'm out of office. But I petition council support. It's a really good day to begin to see these kinds of things happening. I couldn't be any more proud of a project than I am of the Beltsuver School project. And I ask members to please support, and thank you for giving me the time to sort of put this out there. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1145.
Bill 1145, resolution granting a vacation of an unopened 10-foot alley known as Nashville Way as recorded in the plan of Ross Common in Plan Book Volume 2, page 30, and also in the amended plan of Glenwood, recorded in Plan Book Volume 3, page 269 in the Department of Real Estate of Allegheny County, PA, in the 15th Ward, 5th Council District of the City of Pittsburgh.
Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none. Councilwoman Warwick?
Just quickly, my understanding is this is basically an alley that nobody uses. It's grown over, and they just want to.
Is it your district?
Yeah, and they just the Glenwood one, and they just want to use it. Yeah, it's behind the building. So.
Thank you.
I see it now.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Bill 1146.
Bill 1146, resolution granting under Springway Center LLC, their successors and assigns the privilege and license to construct, maintain, and use at their cost and expense a new shallow vault 28 to 30 inches feet deep with solid concrete lid at 2330 Penn Avenue in the 2nd Ward, 7th Council District of the City of Pittsburgh.
A motion to approve brief discussion?
Second.
I'm just curious, what is the vault for? Anybody know?
Whose district is this?
This is,
It's my district. It's on Penn Avenue. I'm assuming it's a PW safe vault, but I can confirm that if you want.
I'm
director
just,
come
I'm
to
just
the table?
curious. I don't
The
debate it.
director
or I'm
wants to
not-
come to the table.
Hey, come on
Oh,
up.
come on. I don't know if we're burying something, a time capsule, what's going on?
Usually it's utilities.
Good morning, Director. Thank you for being here.
Bus? They go down themselves.
Kim Lucas, Director for the city's Department of Mobility and Infrastructure. This is a vault needed to install a transformer. It's too large to fit through the doorway without a depressed slab, so the vault will only be open when transformer is installed and when it is replaced.
Oh, and also a motion to amend, because that is District 1.
Oh,
First council district, because it's the
Oh,
strip
we
district.
reapportioned?
I was thinking,
Yeah.
I was like picturing Penn Avenue, and I know like all of the water infrastructure in like Bloomfield, Garfield, but this is not. This is the strip. So, motion to can I make a verbal amendment?
Yes.
Sorry, Councilman, I jumped in on you. So, Madam Clerk,
Yes.
I'm just gonna motion to amend 1146 to read first council district of the city of Pittsburgh.
Second.
good catch, Councilman.
It's going to happen a lot
All
probably over
those,
the next year.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? The bill has been amended. Any further discussion on the bill as amended? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Madam Clerk, can we take Bill 1147 and 1148 together? They're companion pieces.
Bill 1147, resolution granting a vacation of a portion of Wiley Avenue laid out in the Lower Hill Plan Development District Improvement Subdivision Site Plan Number 1 from the intersection of Logan Street to its southwestern terminus in the 3rd Ward, 6th Council District of the city. And Bill 1148, resolution authorizing acceptance by the City of Pittsburgh the dedication of portions of Washington Place in Bedford Avenue in the 3rd Ward, 6th Council District.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Both bills receive an affirmative recommendation. That'll take us to Land Use and Economic Development Committee, which is chaired by Councilman Wilson. One deferred paper, Bill 661.
Bill 661, resolution accepting a new street name, Wood Ring Court, in the 23rd Ward of the City of Pittsburgh as per recommendation by the City of Pittsburgh Addressing Committee. The following street name was approved by CPAC in June of 2022. The name listed in this ordinance shall be made official in accordance with the Pittsburgh Code, Title IV, Public Places and Property, Chapter 420, Uniform Street Naming and Addressing.
Motion to hold 4 weeks.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Bill will be held 4 weeks. That takes us to our new papers, Bills 1154.
Bill 1154, resolution further amending Resolution Number 797 of 2017, effective December 28, 2017, as amended entitled, Resolution adopting and approving the 2018 capital budget and the 2018 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2018 through 2023 Capital Improvement Program by reducing various organizations by adjusting various line items funded by the Community Development Block Grant in Program Year 2018 and authorize subsequent agreements.
Hold my mic. Motion to approve.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. Councilman, you want to read 55 and 56 together? Cool.
Bill 1155, resolution further amending Resolution Number 647 of 2020, effective December 23, 2020, as amended entitled, Resolution adopting and approving the 2021 capital budget and the 2021 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2021 through 2026 Capital Improvement Program by adjusting various line items funded by the Community Development Block Grant in Program Year 2021 and authorize subsequent agreements. Bill 1156, Resolution further amending Resolution Number 886 of 2021, effective December 27, 2021, as amended, entitled Resolution Adopting and Approving the 2022 Capital Budget and the 2022 Community Development Block Grant Program and the 2022 through 2027 Capital Improvement Program, so as to identify specific public service grant projects in City Council District 5 and authorize a subsequent agreement or agreements for operation, administrative expensive maintenance, purchase of equipment, and/or rehabilitation of neighborhood facilities on behalf of the residents of the City of Pittsburgh.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation for both bills. That takes us to our last committee of the day, which is Recreation, Youth, and Senior Committee, which is chaired by Councilwoman Strasburger. We have one deferred bill, Bill 860.
Bill 860, resolution instructing the Director of Parks and Recreation and the Director of the Department of Public Works to amend the rules and regulations for sports field permits to provide priority use to athletic organizations comprised of the City of Pittsburgh residents.
Motion to approve with discussion. Thank you. I'll defer to the bill sponsors.
Thank you.
I do want to acknowledge Mohammed because he's done it.
Yeah, he's good.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilperson Strasburg and Madam President. So we had worked with DPW to put forward the best bill that we thought. Went into this conversation with, my understanding from what I was seeing with local community groups, sports community groups, whatever you want to call them, because they provide a lot for the community, especially in the time of when we continue to discuss what our youth can be doing, after school. So they provide a lot of programming for them, and just always wanted to keep them at the front of the conversation, and believe that this bill does that as best that it could. I think what's been brought to light here is that we just need more fields and we need more, I believe we probably have the space. It would be good for the school district to start going in the direction of providing more fields for their either individual school, or this is just my personal opinion, individual school, or just more fields available to multiple schools. But there is also a time limit for that for schools. So I believe it's at a time point that doesn't disrupt any current programming, but at least can shed some light on how much the fields are being used by the schools. So I think there could be an investment there, and that would just open up more opportunities for those fields to be used at later times as well. So we do coordinate with a lot of different school districts, and did make an extra effort to put it in to code what the priority list. There was a priority list that the permitting offices were going off of, and to actually formalize that and to put that into the public's eye, I think is the best approach, so that there's nothing going on behind closed doors, that the public can see what the process is, and they can criticize it, and we should continue to talk about it. Other than that, I think currently it would be the best bill to put forward, and I'm looking forward to any discussion about the topic.
Thank you, Madam President, followed by Councilwoman Warwick.
And you put in the piece that Councilwoman Warwick, I couldn't hear you done. You put in the piece where the athletic associations have priority as well. The
The Youth Athletic Association.
The Youth Athletic Association. Okay. That's it. I just want to make sure that was in there. That's the one part I think we share a concern with. So I just want to make sure that's in there.
Yeah, it's in there.
But I do think that there's a lot to be said about the partnership with Pittsburgh Public Schools. We work well with them. We talk about working well with them. They use our fields a lot. But I would like to see it be reciprocated with our buildings and some other things. That might be one of the things we do. Yeah, the pools, swimming pools, and some other things that we could use their help in maintaining and doing. And I mean, I know that, and I don't want to, because they're an easy target, because everybody can say Pittsburgh Public Schools, should be doing more, and I know that they have a lot of challenges, but I do wish that we had a better relationship in terms of the, youth after school hours. That's all. Thank you.
Councilman Warwick?
I just went, so, because I don't have it in front of me, so my concern was the priority list where the local youth, was that updated? That was updated? Okay.
Yeah, there was always just if we have it wrong, that was always the intention. I believe it was there, but we further clarified so that it's clear.
I mean, I have to say, I'm still a little concerned about like city sports having priority. I mean, I say like I've got Greenfield Baseball and Hazelwood Cobras, and they have, I mean, Bud Hammer, like that's, you know what I mean?
They have interrogatory.
I mean,
I think it's the time. Most of the athletic associations don't start until 6 o'clock.
yeah, 5 or 6, right?
But this
right.
is, he's given priority during a time frame, which
Okay.
ends at 5. So that would be helpful to the athletic associations.
Okay.
And if they have any concerns, we can amend it, okay?
Okay.
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 Because I'm with you on that one.
The,
Not many.
any yet, Councilman Warwick, are you finished, or you still have the floor? I'm not sure if you were done. Okay.
I'm done. Thanks.
Any other members, first round? If not, second round, Councilman Wilson?
Yeah, I left out one comment I want to make about the experience of working with the department and the permitting, people who do the permitting. It was because I've been on council for 3 years now, and throughout that time is when they started the process of not granting organizations a blanket permit. And so I think what I've seen from organizations that reach out to my office is that they were used to getting the blanket permit, and they would just have to field so much that even whenever the permit office stopped giving blanket permits, and the organization, I'm sorry, and then there was the field was always busy then because there wasn't this time that no one was on the field because that blanket that organization didn't have a practice or a game. That when the fields were so busy that the residents started complaining, saying, when can we have open field time again? Because there's always someone there using the field. And that just came to light at throughout the discussions, because the fields are being used, around the clock, because there aren't blanket permits anymore. And it turns out that we do have a lot of organizations that support youth and have always been looking for field access.
Can I say something else? I just want to add to that Councilman Calco, I think you run an athletic association too, right? I do, yes. You do currently? Yes. Okay. And so, and then I did for about 20 years. And I feel like we need to treat them as partners instead of like the enemy all the time. We're always trying to figure out a way to put them in their place, and how dare they want the fields, and how dare they, but they're taking 10,000 kids off the streets and doing something positive with them. And so for me, I feel like we need to understand and value them a little more. No, they're not paying for the field, but you're also not paying to keep the kids entertained and do other things that they are doing. And and to pay for responses when kids are throwing rocks or doing some. So there's another cost associated with not doing the things and not being supportive of the athletic associations. They do a tremendous amount of work for our community and for our city as a whole. And I think we need to start valuing them as a partner, the same as we're talking about valuing Pittsburgh Public Schools. They are also a valued partner in this, and I think we need to make sure that we send that. I think that's why this legislation was important to me. I wanted to send a message that they are valued just as much as everybody else. So we appreciate them. I'm sorry. And I do care about the big kids. Listen, I had a basketball hoop in front of my house, and I don't even have kids, okay? And I have a swing set in my yard, and I don't have little kids. So I don't know.
Thank you. Councilman Warwick?
I took the basketball hoop
Yeah,
down.
I just do also, in the permitting process, I know on the city side, it can, it can feel like it's so straightforward. Just apply for your permit and just do it in the right, in the timely manner. But it can be hard sometimes. I mean, keeping in mind that the folks who run these things, they work, they have kids. Like this is, they are just, managing a small baseball club is a huge endeavor. And I guess, a little understanding, and then a game gets rained out, and then now I got to get a permit for it, and we don't even know when it's not going to rain. Like there's all these, baseball especially, right? There's all these complications to permitting. So I do understand why they just sort of want to have priority over the field. And it would be nice if there could just be a sort of, if the leagues could be included in that, so that, it's not like people want to, that they're like, don't use the field even if we're not using it. That's not it. It's that they just want to be included. They don't want to just be surprised and find out like, oh, wait, one day, the city sports team, now they have, like, what? They have our field, like, and that creates stress between the various clubs and within the clubs themselves. Right. So, especially when they leave the mess for the local organization to clean up sometimes, and it just creates that tension. Unnecessarily. We need more fields. We need fields for adults.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Affirmative recommendation. That exhausts our agenda for today. We do have meeting announcements this afternoon at 3:30 and 4 p.m. Council will hold an executive session on bills 1116, 1149, 1150, 1151, 1152, and 1153. Next week, Council will hold our regular and standing committee meetings on Tuesday, February 7th and Wednesday, February 8th at 10 a.m. respectively. Speaker registration will close at 9 a.m. the day of the meeting. To register to speak at these meetings and hearings, please fill out the sign-up form on the council meeting webpage. You may also call the clerk's office at 412-255-2138. Is there anything from members? Councilman Warwick?
Yeah, I have on my calendar the executive session about the PWSA board appointment. Is that today or was that moved?
That is today, I believe.
That's today.
Oh, yeah. At 1:30? What time? I'm sorry. Oh, it's at 4.
That's okay. All right. I just want to make sure.
Councilwoman Strasburger.
Yes, I want to take the opportunity to highlight a member of my staff who will be leaving this Friday. Oh. So my Chief of Staff, Emily Yonan, who's been with us through arguably some of the hardest times that we've experienced in recent history on council, is it's a bittersweet announcement, happily joining Congressman Chris DeLuzio's team starting next week. So we're all sad to see her go, but the city's loss is certainly that district's and the congressman's office's gain. So just wanted to thank Emily for her many years serving District 8 and all that we've been through, and wish her all the best.
Thank you, Councilman Coghill.
My heart was broken. I just started to get to know Emily, and no sooner did I get to know her, I hear the news that she's leaving. But good for her. Congratulations to her. She was going to be our softball coach, so what are we going to do now?
So we're going to have to recruit someone else to organize our city council mayor's softball game, or baseball game.
She's still going to stay on as a coach?
Well,
all right.
We can't have any ringers out here.
Anything else from members?
I just want to mention the start of Black History Month, and it'd be nice if maybe we did a project together as a council.
Okay.
To celebrate that.
Certainly.
Thank you.
With that, we need a motion to excuse the absent member, approve the minutes, and adjourn the meeting.
So
moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.